ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरि ओम। सुमुखश्च एकदन्तश्च कपिलो गजकर्णकः लम्बोदरश्च विकटो विघ्नराजो विनायकः धूमकेतुर्गणाध्यक्षः फालचन्द्रो गजाननः वक्रतुण्डः सूर्पकर्णो हेरम्बः स्कन्दपूर्वजः शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। यस्य द्विरदवक्त्राभ्याः पारिषद्भ्याः परस्सतं विघ्नं निघ्नन्ति सततं विश्वक्सेनं तमाश्रये। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुसाक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। सच्चिदानन्दरूपाय कृष्णाय अक्लिष्टकारिणे नमो वेदान्तवेद्याय गुरवे बुद्धिसाक्षिणे कृष्णद्वैपायनं व्यासं सर्वभूतहिते रतं वेदाब्जभास्करं वन्दे समाधिनिलयं मुनिं जन्माद्यस्य यतः अन्वयात् इतरतश्च अर्थेषु अभिघ्नः तेने ब्रह्महृदायः आदिकवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः तेजोवारिमृगां यथा विनिमयो यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि धर्मः प्रोचिधकैतवोऽत्र परमो निर्मत्सराणां सतां वेद्यं वास्तवम् अत्र वस्तु शिवदं तापत्रयोन्मूलनं श्रीमद्भागवते महामुनिकृते किं वा परैरीश्वरः सद्यो हृदि अवरुध्यते अत्र कृतिभिः सुस्पृशिभिः तत्क्षणात् निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं सुखमुखात् अमृतद्रवसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयं मुहुरहो रसिकाः भुवि भावुकाः। यं प्रव्रजन्तम् अनुपेतम् अपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरह कातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुः तं सर्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। यः स्वानुभावम् अखिलश्रुतिसारम् एकम् अध्यात्मदीपम् अपि तितीर्षतां तमोन्धम संसारिणां करुणयाः पुराणगुह्यं तं व्याससूनुम् उपयामि गुरुं मुनीनाम्। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। Now, with Swami's grace, let us continue from where we left off yesterday. Just a quick reminder, with His grace, we have taken up for taking a brief summary of Skandams 1, 2, and 3. That's what we covered, word by word meaning, with His grace, Pratipad Artham, as they say. And before we take up Skandam number 4, the thought occurred that we should do a revision, a brief revision of what is covered in Skandams 1, 2, and 3. So that is what we have taken up, a brief summary only. Okay. Now, yesterday we had a glimpse, took a glimpse into the rulership of King Parikshit, how he ruled the kingdom, how everyone was happy, how Dharma was ruling the kingdom really, because Parikshit was a Dharma Swarupa. And the challenge was Dwapara Yugam was ending, Kali Yugam was beginning, so Kali was rearing its head. That is also Bhagavan's Leela and design in the scheme of things, in balancing things out. And how did Parikshit handle and manage and control the rise of Kali during his reign? That also we saw. And most importantly, that's also very important, equally importantly, to apply in our daily life. In our daily life, right now, starting this minute, it is not something that is academic that you hear and then move on and forget about it. No, something to be applied in our daily life. we saw the 5 places where Kali resides. Kali means Kalaham. Kali Yuga is Kalaha Yuga. Kalaha means what? Disturbance. Disturbance of what? Disturbance of mental peace. Santam. Whose Santam are we talking about? Our own, my own. Because if I am peaceful, the whole world is peaceful. Right? Because I'm agitated, I'm not peaceful, I find lots of troubles and disturbances in the world. So the Kali is not elsewhere. Kali is not external. No. It is internal. It's in me. And where is it present? In those 5 places that we saw. Very important. I want you to revisit slokams 17.38 and 39. 39 especially for those of us who do not eat non-vegetarian, who do not kill animals, who do not gamble, who are not take intoxicating liquors, and people who live within the boundaries of morality in terms of marriage and don't go after extramarital relationships and that kind of stuff. Okay, 38, slokam 38 doesn't apply. We are past that. But to 39, the attachment, the desire, the acquisitive desire for money, and that gives rise to 5 characteristic tendencies that take us away from Bhagavan, from our own peace. And that we have to be very careful of. In 39 especially, I urge you to revisit and see if that applies to you on a personal level, and if so, what should you do about it? So that's a very important take. Now, to overcome that, of course, that it is not lost. The benefit, the facile benefit of Kali Yuga is that is the easiest path to attain peace, to attain oneness with Bhagavan, to embrace the lotus feet. Very easy to do. All I have to do is a little bit of punyam, little bit of good thoughts in my mind, and say Bhagavan's name. There are so many advantages out there that is not available elsewhere. So now that's a brief introduction. Now we came up to how Parikshit went hunting and was extremely thirsty because he was reveling in the stories and glories of Krishna that he had just heard from Vyasa Bhagavan. He yearned to be with Krishna. He said, I wish I could be with you. I wish I was your young baby. So he had not seen him really, that in a way he could recall, but he could never let go of the thought of Krishna from his mind. Whatever he did, it was like the company of Krishna, offering to Krishna, always will Krishna be pleased with this. I think it's an unbelievable connection, and as close and as continuous as our breathing is. And so he was reveling in the stories that he had just heard, how Krishna saved Pandavas, what were the various things he did. Unbelievable. So he lost his way, became thirsty, and looking for water, he went to an ashram, and he called out very feebly because he was very tired, please help me, I'm thirsty, I need some water. Nobody answered. He entered the hut. He found a rishi, was engaged in dhyanam, in samadhi, so he did not hear him. So as by the twist of fate, this is the Dataka Sutradhari, the king acted in an extremely uncharacteristic way. He was a man given to nobility, dharma, but this anger rose from him, and he picked up a dead snake and put it around the neck of the sage, and he walked away. Why did he do it? Now, that's Bhagavan's play. We will see that now. So, then he walked away fast. Then some boys saw him emerge from the cottage. They entered the place to find out why he had gone in and what had happened there, because he looked like a stranger and he was gorgeously dressed. They saw around the neck of the sage, Samika, a snake. He went closer and examined to find that it was dead. They wondered who could have done this atrocity. They surmised it must be the handiwork of the man who had just left the hermitage. So they ran out to inform Shringi, the son of Samika, who was engaged in games. He's a young boy. They were all playing outside. Now, Shringi, of course, did not listen to all this complaint that they were making. He thought, who would insult, especially his father, who was a sage and a rishi like that? So he thought they were playing a game. But the boys kept repeating it, insisting that, please, this is true. What we are telling you is true. So then Shringi thought, oh my God, this could be true. So he ran and ran into the cottage, found what unbelievable had happened. He sought to find out who the culprit who had perpetrated this atrocity against his revered father. He came to know a person in royal robes had gone in and come out, and that there had been no one else around since morning. So the boys concluded it must be his handiwork. Then, at this, Shringi ran in the direction pointed by the boys where the man had gone to catch him. Now, before long, he saw the person in regal clothing, and his anger knew no bounds. He threw a handful of water at the king, slowly walking. The king was walking slowly before him. So Shringi, the little boy, threw a handful of water at him and pronounced the curse. May he who threw the dead snake around the neck of my father be bitten by a snake on the 7th day, and may he die that day of that poison. The boys, all these young comrades, appealed to him, please don't curse like this. But he didn't listen. He threw the curse at the king in spite of the pleading. Then he went back into the cottage, slumped on the floor in a corner, and with his head, his head was very hot from anger. He was thinking, wow, my father had to suffer this ignominy, this distress, that humiliation when I am alive and about. I might as well have been dead. He was cursing himself. Of what use is a son alive if he cannot prevent someone insulting his father? He condemned himself like this and was bewailing his fate most pitiably. All his friends there, they all gathered around him, tried to console him, pacify him. They all abused the wrongdoer roundly. They tried to console the disconsolate boy. Now, meanwhile, the sage Samika emerged from his inner bliss and entered the realm of consciousness. His eyes opened. He unwound the dead snake from his neck and placed it beside him. He saw the son weeping in a corner and beckoned to him to come near. He asked the reason for his grief and got from him the tale of the stranger and the dead snake. Then Samika smiled and said, poor fellow, he did it out of ignorance and you reveal your ignorance, weeping for it. I am not concerned with honor or dishonor. The knowledge of the Atma enables a man to keep himself on an even keel, neither rising when praised nor falling when blamed. Somebody must have played this silly prank. Since you are boys, you are young, you are exaggerating it into a very big crime. Now, you are making a big mountain of a molehill. Get up, go to the playground, he said. He made his son sit on his lap and gently stroked his head so that his grief might abate a little. Shringi told his father, Papa, this is no prank played by a mischievous man. No. This is a terrible sacrilege committed by an ego-intoxicated fellow in the garb of a king, he said. When he said this, Samika said, what? What do you say? The person in the garb of a king? Did you see him? Did the king commit this stupid misdemeanor? This silly thing can never enter a king's head. But Suringi's friends all joined their voices together. They testified, yes, sir, we saw the person responsible for the sacrifice. Master, we saw the dead snake and we ran to where Sringi was and brought him here. Sringi got so angry that he took the water of the Kausika river in his hand and threw it at that person who was walking away very fast, pronouncing at the same time with appropriate mantram the curse. The person who plays a dead snake die of a snake bite the 7th day from today. Now, Samika was shocked when he heard this. He was astonished at the behavior of his son. He pushed him out of his lap onto the floor. What? Did you throw a curse like that? Oh, the son of a sage should behave like this. Oh, my. What a calamitous curse. For this trivial offense. Yours is a wrong which can never be atoned. You are a disgrace to the group of comrades around you. You cannot bear with fortitude such a silly, insignificant prank. I'm ashamed to say such a boy is my son. You have no strength of mind to bear such little affronts. Oh, what a pity. Alas, that your childishness should plunge all rishis and ascetics and sages into ill fame. People will say they have not got even elementary patience and fortitude. Do not show me your face. To punish people for wrongs done is a duty of the king, not that of the recluse in the forest. The recluse who pronounces curses is no recluse at all. Now, he said, the sages, they are yearning to achieve the vision of the Paramatma, the presence, the guide, and the guardian of all the worlds. So, the recluse gives up all attachments. He establishes himself in the forest. He lives on fruits and roots. He denounces all catering to the senses because they are detrimental to spiritual progress. For such horrid curses born of impatience and egoism should come on the tongue of a recluse is a sign of impending doom. It marks the dawn of the Kali age, the age of the untruth, he said. What a great sin, son, you have committed, added to your burden today, he remarked. He described to his sons and his comrades the heinousness of the act that Sringi has done. The pointed words of the father inflicted great pain on the tender heart of Sringi, the son. They fell like sword thrusts or hammer strokes. The poor boy could bear them no longer. He fell on the floor and grasping the feet of his father, he cried, Father, pardon me. I was overcome by anger. But the king himself should behave so outrageously, so irreverently, so inhumanely. I could not control the resentment, Father, and the insult hurled on you. It is not proper that a king should behave like this in this most inappropriate manner, having come into a hermitage, is it? He asked. Seeing his plight, Samika, the ascetic, took the son beside him and said, Son, the compulsion of the moment is inescapable. Now, my dear brothers and sisters, take this as a mantra. Compulsion of the moment is inescapable. The Nataka Sutradhari pulls the strings and we are all puppets. Please remember that. Okay, very important. So Samika continued. He said, Son, the compulsion of the moment is inescapable. The dictates of reason are often brushed aside by man due to that compulsion. The drag of destiny will destroy the reins of reason. The force of the moment faces man with all its power, and he cannot but yield. This king a staunch devotee, a very deep devotee. He has earned spiritual splendor, tejas, that comes from sacrifice and purity of mind and heart. He is established in moral behavior. He is the Lord of all the regions. His fame has pervaded all the three worlds. He is served always by thousands of loyal men and minds. When he leaves his mansion and moves out, he is accompanied by many gods who await with folded hands and eyes fixed on him, his least command, so that they may win his favor by executing them to his satisfaction. As soon as he enters the kingdom, the ruler thereof accords him a glorious welcome, offers him magnificent hospitality, respectful homage. A person accustomed to this rich routine was naturally shocked when he did not receive any sign of welcome here. He was not even recognized and respected. The neglect was so serious that he did not get a cup of water to alleviate his thirst. He was torn by the pangs of hunger and of humiliation because there was no response, even though he called out many times. So, unable to bear the agony and the shock, he was led to commit this improper act. Of course, it's a fault. Of course, it's a fault what he did. But just for this small misdemeanor, when you reacted so harshly, my son, you brought irreparable damage to the entire community of ascetics and hermits and sages and rishis. Alas, what a terrible calamity you have done. The aged hermit, Samika, closed his eyes and sat silent for a while. He was trying to find out some means by which the king can be saved from the curse. He could not find any means at all. And then he realized that God alone, Bhagavan alone, can set such things right. Since he is all-powerful and all-knowing, he prayed with all his heart. He said, "Oh, Siddhina Bandhava," and the Sharanagata Vatsala, he said, the refuge of all the worlds. This immature little boy with no knowledge of right and wrong, of what is one's duty and what is not one's duty, prompted by ignorance, has committed this great blunder, harmful to the king. Pardon this boy or punish him, but promote the welfare of the king is what he prayed. Then he opened his eyes. He saw other ascetics and young comrades of his son. They were all standing before him. With sadly, he told them, "Did you notice the injury that my son has perpetrated? It is not right that we, hermits, should insult and injure the king, who is the guardian and the guide of humanity. So many people depend on him. Therefore, I request you all to pray to Bhagavan that the king should come to no harm and that only auspicious things be added to him." When the Rishi Samika directed them this way, an aged, elderly monk, he rose from the group. He was a very picture of peace and resignation. So tejas he had. He said, "Oh Mahodaya, oh great soul, you are showering such profuse grace on this king. Now the person who pronounced this curse, your own son. Surely your spiritual attainments are much higher than your son's, and you can achieve anything through them. Why then are you so much concerned about the curse that this boy hurled at the king? You can make it ineffective, can't you?" At this, the rest of the group, the elders and the young ones, exclaimed, yes, true. Please listen to our prayers and pardon this boy. Bring about the welfare of the king and save him from harm. Then the sage Samika, he smiled. He closed his eyes. He saw with his inner yogic vision the past and the future of the king, and examined whether his present was conditioned by his past, or is it conditioned by his future? He found that Parikshit had to suffer the poison bite of the cobra Takshaka, and that this was his destiny. He felt that trying to save him from his end will be going counter to the dictates of divinity. He realized that the misbehavior of the king and the angry reaction of his son were both the consequences of that compulsive urge. He concluded that only Bhagavan, the artificer of all revolutions and achievements, can modify events, and that any effort on his part would amount to an exhibition of egoism. He knew that egoism is the deadliest foe of hermits, of rishis, but at the same time, he did not amass his undoubted strength against it and destroy it completely. He decided to render what little help he could to the unfortunate king. Then he opened his eyes. He looked on all four sides to select a clever disciple of his from among the gathering. Then he called one student to him and said, "You must proceed immediately to Hastinapura and return. Prepare yourself for the journey and come to me again." The student replied, "Sir, I am ever ready to obey your command. What have I to do with preparations? I am ever prepared. I can start this very moment. Tell me what I have to do." Then he fell at the feet of the master. The sage rose from his seat, took the student into the inner apartment. He told them in detail all the points that he had to inform the king. Then the student fell at the master's feet and set out towards the capital. Meanwhile, King Parikshit had reached his palace, and after a short rest, he awoke into a realization of the enormity of the wrong that he had done at the hermitage. Alas, what have I done? Into what depths of foulness did my mind fall? It is indeed heinous sin that I, the emperor, should cast an insult on that ascetic. He was lamenting within himself, how am I to make amends for this crime? Shall I go to the hermitage and plead for pardon? Or shall I offer my head to bear the punishment that is my due? What exactly is my duty now? He struggled with himself to find an answer. At that time, just then, he saw a god who came up to the door and stood silent with folded arms. The king asked him why he had come. And the man said, "A student from a hermitage has come and is waiting for audience. He says he has been sent by the sage Samika. He says his message is very urgent and important. He is in a great hurry. I'm awaiting royal command." When these words fell on his ears, the bed of jasmine flowers on which the king was reclining appeared to have been transformed into a bed of snakes with fiery tongues hissing and writhing all around him. He called God to come near him, and he pelted question after question at him about the young man who had come from the hermitage. How is he? Does he appear sad or angry? Is he brimful of joy and equanimity? The God replied, "O king, the sage's son who has come to have your audience is quite calm and peaceful. He is repeating the words, 'Victory to the king, victory to the king, victory to our ruler.' I do not see any trace of anger or passion on his face." This gave the king some comfort. He sought to find out what reply had been given to the questions asked by the young student. The god said, "Sir, we told him the king had been to the forest. He returned only just now. He's taking rest for a while. Please wait for some time. As soon as he breaks his rest, we will inform him. The king inquired, what did he reply to this? The god said, O Lord, the young man was most anxious to see you as quickly as possible. He said he had some urgent message to communicate. He said his master would be awaiting his return and counting the minutes. And he said the sooner he sees you, the better. He was repeating within himself all the time, may it be well with the king, may safety and prosperity be on him. We offered him a high seat and we invited him to occupy it, but he did not accept it. He preferred to stand at the door. He's counting minutes there. Then tears of joy welled within the eyes of the king. Wiping them off, he hurried towards the entrance without donning his regal robes or the insignia, without caring even to wear sandals or a robe over the chest. He fell prostrate at the feet of the son of the hermit. He held both his hands in his own and led him into the inner apartments, where he placed him on a high seat, and he himself sat on the floor beneath. He prayed that he might be told the reason for the journey. And then the student said, Swami, King, my master, sage Samika, sends you his special blessings. He has commissioned me to communicate to you some special matters. And then he broke into tears. With Swami's grace, we will continue tomorrow. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Samastalokaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Samastalokaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Samastalokaha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om.